Hello and welcome. We've been hearing from the International Monetary Fund, we've been hearing from the World Bank, from chief economists about the prospects of global economic growth and the Indian economic story. But to get a sense of how the Indian economy is doing in the eyes of one of the world's foremost economists, former Governor of the Reserve Bank of India, I'm joined at the India Today studios here at the World Economic Forum in Davos by Dr. Raghuram Rajan. It's terrific to have you with us and thank you for your time. I want to start by asking you, in your individual capacity as a renowned academic, how you see the India story at this moment.
Well, I think certainly growth this year, this fiscal year that's going to finish is spectacular, 7%. But you'll have to look at the details of that growth to feel comfortable. And what's happening there is that we grew fairly fast in the early part of the year, rebounding from the slow growth as a result of the pandemic. And if you look at the later part of the year, we've slowed down to about a 5% rate. And that's a worrying issue because going forward, 5% may be even less because of the effects of the slowing global economy. We're already seeing our goods exports slowing down substantially. So I think we can't be complacent. Good year, but looking forward, we need to do more to get growth up to the place where we as a country can provide all the jobs we need.
When I speak to economists who are currently in the government system in India, they say Raghuram Rajan was wrong. He said that the Indian economy, in the manner in which we dealt with the pandemic, would do much worse than it has. When you meet him, ask, does he accept that he was wrong? So how do you respond to this?
Well, it depends on what your baseline is. From 2019 to 2022, how fast have we grown? 2.5% a year. Are you satisfied with 2.5%? If they are satisfied, I'm wrong.
But relative to the rest of the world and the economic situation.
So what you have to look at is how we're doing relative to our baseline. If you look at the US, back to its baseline growth. Look at India, 7% below the baseline according to JP Morgan. So yeah, we haven't gone back to where we were. 7% in terms of GDP is a huge number. And remember, that's repeated. So we have some catching up to do. I won't be as complacent as a government economist.
In the data that is coming out of India at this moment, what is of greatest concern to you, Dr. Rajan?
It's the lower middle class. I talk to business people, they say K-shaped recovery. Of course, there are people who say, there's no K-shaped recovery. Big businesses doing really well. They paid down their debt during the pandemic. Banks, they've written off their bad loans. So banks and businesses ready to go. The problem is the lower middle class, they've had a bad pandemic. Some of them have lost their jobs. Small and medium enterprises didn't do so well. They're coming back. But the issue then is, where do these people feel the comfort? As you know, two-wheeler sales haven't done nearly as well as four-wheeler sales. Two-wheeler sales are coming back. But there's ways to go. And if you look at two-wheeler sales, they're back to 2013 levels. So there is some recovery needed. My worry is the lower middle class. That's where the anxiety is, the lack of jobs.
You and the likes of, say, Professor BIZ TAK were recommending more handouts to those at the bottom of the pyramid. The government held out against it, saying time will prove that we are right. It may still take some more time for the last word to be written, but in the way that things are, the government's assessment is, look at those countries that went out and spent much more than India did. They are far worse than we are right now.
It's a very good question. The government did spend a fair amount at the bottom of the pyramid. So what we were saying in the early part of the pandemic is you need to spend that money. They did. And they've continued it. Remember, the government food grain program is being extended by an additional year. The point is, there was a lot of suffering. There still is some suffering. Now, could you can debate whether you could have ameliorated that. My sense is, if you look at government expenditure, some more could have been spent in that direction without necessarily breaking the budget. Now, we were not saying go out and break the budget. It was transfer some payments from one side of the budget to another. Take, for example, how much we're spending on subsidizing big industry, the PLI payments, right? That's going to mount. It's not yet a big ticket item, but we have 2.5 lakh crores already budgeted for that.
Is it having the desired result in terms of helping bring international investment to India? How would you gauge the effectiveness of production?
That is precisely the problem, right? That we don't have a good sense. What I get is, oh, Apple is coming in. Well, would Apple have come in regardless? Because of the fact that China now, everybody is looking for a China plus one or a China plus two strategy. We are an attractive country. We are a country with 1.4 billion people. We have a we have a GDP of 3 trillion. So you will see people coming in. Is it more incremental? And therefore, is the spending that we're doing necessary to get them in? Similarly, we're spending on renewables, this, that. PLI expands across. I would like to see a calculation which tells me how many jobs are we getting for the subsidies we are putting in. And that means an incremental calculation. Do we really need the subsidy to Adani, to Ambani, to the Tatas, to get them to get into that industry? They have plenty of money. If that industry is attractive, is 2 or 3 years of subsidy going to make the difference, or will they get in anyway?
In the manner in which global supply chains are being reorganized, you spoke of China plus one. Do you see India being the biggest beneficiary or just one of the many beneficiaries of a new emerging trade?
At this point, it is one of the many beneficiaries. When people think about what do I do to replace China, their first thought is Vietnam or Thailand or places like that. But then India has an advantage, which is its size. India is not going to remain 3 trillion going forward. It's going to become much bigger. So it's attractive from that perspective. Let's get in early. So that is precisely why I'm saying that we have benefits of our own. Let's think about augmenting them. What do people look for? They're looking for good logistics. They're looking for power. They're looking for steady regulation. They don't want tariffs going up one budget and coming down the other and going up another.
But that's not been happening any longer.
Tariffs have been going up steadily.
No, but not in a haphazard up and down kind of.
No, but steady tariffs without telling you where they're going to go up is a source of uncertainty. Because I know that what I rely on is a supply chain. It's not one entity coming in, it's the entire supply chain that we want to attract. If they don't, the rest of the supply chain doesn't come in, you may get an entity just coming in for the PLI benefits and not bringing a whole lot of activity. If you look at value added, India cannot tie PLI to value added because that would be against WTO rules. So we say, you just produce, that's fine. What is the incentive to bring the whole value chain unless you know everything else is going to change? Very little.